I'm going to hint at a few things that I want to talk with you about, but I've got to start here. We are not a democracy. And every time I hear Kamala Harris discuss democracy as if it is something that we are, I cringe and would love to have a chance just to explain how her country really works. Because we are a constitutional republic. Now, this is called federalism. The idea of federalism is the sharing of power between either branches of government, but more specifically, the sharing of power between states and federal government. Now, I am one of those rare types that I like to use the words of the founders to explain what your country really is. This is called original intent. The Constitution means what the founders said it means. So how do we know that? One of the greatest gifts they gave us was they wrote a lot. You can go back in a congressional record, Federalist Papers, you can find out what did they mean when they said Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. They did not say anywhere in there separation of church and state. Nowhere. Separation of church and state is a farce. The prohibition is on the government. You do not lose your faith, your religion, or your constitutional rights because you walked into a building, a room, or an office. And we are slowly beginning to realize and rebuild that cornerstone of America. I want you to look at this. This is one of the most important things and phrases we have ever heard. James Madison in Federalist Paper 45 said the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are what? Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and what? Ladies and gentlemen, does that explain the way your government works right now? We're taking that back. Now, I'm only going to quote this gentleman once because this is the only good quote I have from him, and I'll explain that in just a minute. This is Justice Hugo Black. He gives the most definitive explanation of federalism I've seen, and I'll tell you why I only quote him on this now. Some of you may already know. He said a proper respect, this is federalism defined by his words, a proper respect for state functions, a recognition of the fact that the entire country is made up of a union of separate state governments, and a continuance of the belief that the national government will fare best if the state and their institutions are left free to perform their separate functions in their separate ways. That's federalism. If you want your country back, put your city, your schools in check, then make sure your state is operating as it should, as an independent, sovereign state. If we choose and say that we don't really care about this and we want to form a unitary form of government, which is what Kamala Harris believes in, this is what Joe Biden says we are. AOC doesn't even know what she can't even spell democracy. If we want to take this back, we have to take our states back. If not, let's just it's a beautiful building. I mean, my first time into the Capitol, I was at complete awe. I don't know that I had ever been in the Capitol until I ran. Let's just turn it into a museum. It'd make a fabulous museum. You could even make it into a nice hotel. But that's not the intent of our founders. The intent is that we are sovereign, and that building operates for you, not for the ones in suits running around. So let's talk about democracy versus federalism. Let's challenge Kamala on her opinion. This is James Madison. He said, you must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance. Oh my, oh my. I'll come back later and just talk about that one phrase, if that's okay, Jesse. And a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power knowledge gives. Look at that last phrase. Democracy is the most vile form of government. Pure democracy is communism. The way pure democracy works is in order to pass a law, everybody in the country has to show up and participate in it. That's communism. There's a reason why they are pushing for this idea called democracy and refuse to acknowledge that we are a constitutional republic. Now, let me give you the real meaning. This is Thomas Jefferson. He said, I consider the foundation of the Constitution as laid on this ground that all powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states are what? Reserved for the states and the people. He is quoting the 10th Amendment there is all he's doing. That is the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution, something we have to learn, know, understand, and apply. To take a single step, one single step, and we're more than one step beyond. The boundaries thus specially drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power no longer susceptible to any definition. What did they do in Obergefell v. Hodges? They don't have that power. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking right now. If you are interested in helping me overturn Obergefell, the time is now, not next year, not 10 years from now. We have a reserved small amount of time to undo Obergefell. I'll run any bill that you can come to me with to overturn Obergefell. Because we cannot allow the abomination of gay marriage, because what they did was they changed their definition. That's what they did in Obergefell. Marriage is between states. The states are the ones who control marriage. Not nine unelected lawyers on the Supreme Court. And I am very open to that because it is time to take that on. Let me tell you something. Abortion is one of the worst holocausts in human history. And we have allowed it because we just simply said, well, we'll get to that later. How many years has that been? Are we going to look back in 40 years and say, man, we should have really tackled Obergefell early? Let's not say that. Let's go after it toe to toe. This is the difference between the two, and we're there. Now, how did we get here? James Madison said it best. He said, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by what? Gradual and silent encroachments by those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. Adolf Hitler did not go to the Jews and say, I hate you and I'm killing every one of you. What did he do? He said in 1928, you just can't have these kinds of guns. You hearing me? We're not taking away your guns. Listen, just relax. We're not taking away your guns. We're just saying you can't have a clip that we disagree with. The big black, the mean rifles, you just can't have those kind of rifles. We're not taking away your freedom of speech. We're just saying on a college campus, you can't have that speech here. It's got to be in this box over here. Gradual encroachments. You didn't lose your Second Amendment because somebody was offended. You didn't lose your freedom of speech because a college campus said you can only do it over there. You did not lose your faith and your ability to publicly submit that faith to other people because someone is offended by Jesus. I heard a man speak the other day that blew my mind. He said, and he nailed it on a lot of things, critical race theory and other, which I'm talking about in a minute. But he came out and he said, they're not after you because of the color of your skin. They're not after you because of your gender. They're not really after you because of your wealth. The thing they have to take from you so that you can submit is Jesus. If they can make you ashamed to proclaim the name of Jesus on the Capitol floor, they have stripped every right. Every right. If they can convince you that because you are a teacher in a classroom, you do not have the ability to have a cross on your shirt, they have automatically stripped. Let me put it to you this way. Here's how I used to pose that to my kids. Of the five rights guaranteed to you by the First Amendment, religion, speech, press, petition, and assembly, of those five, if the government came to you and said, you have to give up one, you can keep the other four, you have to give up one, which one do you give up? Because if you give up one, all of them are gone. If you lose speech, you can't talk about Jesus in a public market. You lose the right to petition your government for the redress of grievances. They can take all of them and you can't complain. It is the founders were brilliant. God gave them the First Amendment the way that he gave them the First Amendment so that it is a trap on every corner. Do not submit to one. Because when you lose one, you've lost them all. Now, how do we restore America? Now, I want you to pay attention to the way I said that. Barack Obama wants to completely, fundamentally change your country. I categorically reject every precept of that phrase. The Constitution works if you but follow it. It does not need to be rewritten, it needs to be reread. It needs to be retaught. Because the Constitution works. We just have to follow it. I'm not here to remake and turn America around. I'm here to right the ship and restore the country that I know exists. And from the grassroots level, that's where we have to be. So let me go through a few things. This is House Bill 1236. How many of you have heard of House Bill 1236? Some of you may have, some of you may not. Now, House Bill 1236 started off as a much better bill than it ended up. But we'll take the one it ended up. House Bill 1236, which was, if y'all haven't been introduced to Representative Jay Stegall, you need to. Brilliant man. But 1236 says we are reclaiming the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. And here are the things we are reclaiming. So in this bill, I wanted to make sure, and some of you are going to have a hard time seeing it, but here's what we did. We stated the things within the 10th Amendment that we have as our reserve powers, but we came back and we said this on line 24. He said to monitor and evaluate any action of the federal government, including but not limited to executive orders of the President of the United States, rules and regulations promulgated by any agency of the federal government or acts of Congress determined if such actions are in violation of what? The 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. We put our money where our mouth was this year on 1236. We gave the Attorney General $10 million. And we gave ourselves the power to trigger an investigation by the Attorney General. And any unconstitutional act by Congress, any unconstitutional ruling by Congress, any unconstitutional executive order by Joe Biden, we got plenty to pick from. The Attorney General now can be ordered by us to investigate, challenge, and overthrow and overturn. That bill was signed by the governor. I wanted to show this to you. It says here, this is a new law. It says, there is hereby created within the office of the Attorney General a state reserve power protection unit. Man, if that doesn't boil your blood, nothing will. When I read that, I almost punched the pro tem, and he was the one running, but I was like excited. Man, finally, we're doing something. We're pushing back. Now, it was much stronger because at first we just basically said we as the legislature have reserved the power to just say, no, we're done with that executive order. That got taken out and this got put in, and it does weaken it. I will agree, but this I'll take. Because if we don't start pushing back now, we never will. That was House Bill 1236. It's passed and the governor signed it. So let me go to the 10th Amendment. Here's a quote. This is the 10th Amendment. You have to know this. It said, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are what? So this is known as the reserved powers, okay? How many powers does the federal government have delegated to them in the United States Constitution? 17. Go read Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. There are only 17 powers delegated to the United States Congress. 17, that's it. Do they have the power to regulate abortion? Hate to break it to you. Do they have the power to change the definition of marriage? Oh, here's a good one. Do they have the power to dictate what health care you have to have? Oh my. What have they done? Silent encroachment of power. Now, this is a definite overreach. That's an excellent way to put it. I think he explains this very well. This is in Federalist Paper 84. He said, an elective despotism. Man, is that AOC or not? If he would have said ignorant despotism, it would have been better, but was not the government we fought for. How many of you have served in the armed forces? Raise your hand for me. Is Joe Biden the government you fought for? I've not come across one single member of the armed forces or law enforcement who said, this is what I've been risking my life for. This is not it. He said, but one in which the powers of government should be so divided and balanced among the several bodies of the magistracy as that no one could transcend their legal limits without effectually checking and restraining by the others. House Bill 1236 is that check. We just announced to Joe Biden, Oklahoma is done with you. All right, now for next year. Well, I've got one more that I'll tell you about this year that'll get your blood going, but this one's good. How much time do I have? Oh, I got to hurry. Senate Bill 614. I'm going to go quick through these. Senate Bill 614, I got out of committee. It is sitting on the floor, and I'm to have a hearing on it next year, one of the first bills we're going to hear next year. Senate Bill 614 is the Student Bill of Rights for higher education. Now, higher education is a conundrum because it is a separate government entity. Why in the world we set that up in our Constitution? We need a constitutional convention in Oklahoma bad. But Senate Bill 614 says that because a student walks on campus does not mean they abandon certain rights. They did not have to abandon their faith. 78%, a Pew Research poll said 78% of our students going into higher ed are losing and dropping out of their faith. That blows my mind. 78% of our students who go into a higher education campus are losing their faith or denying their denomination. That's how they're doing it. So 614 says you cannot even demean their religion. You cannot even have a symbol that denies them their religion in the classroom. Senate Bill 614 says you cannot deny, freedom of speech cannot have a space. It occupies the entire campus. It says you cannot, now get this, you cannot indoctrinate a student into socialism, communism, Marxism, or anti-American hatred. Oh, the screaming heads of presidents of colleges do not like me right now. I had a Zoom meeting with all of them. It was kind of fun. Here's what I told them in the meeting. I said, the first one of you, I was getting to the end of the meeting and I was getting tired of it because it was just a circle nonstop. They were saying, well, we have academic freedom. And I would ask them, academic freedom to do what? What are your intentions? One of them said, I noticed you put socialism, communism, and Marxism. How come you didn't put that we can't indoctrinate into capitalism on there? Hello? You are a capitalist nation now. America is founded on capitalism. We're not founded on socialism or communism or Marxism. And that was their objection. How come you didn't put capitalism on there? Did you really just ask me that question? And it was more than one. I told them at the end, because I was getting frustrated, I said, the first one of you to figure this out. I'm just shocked you haven't yet. But the first one of you to figure this out, that if you will take the Student Bill of Rights, run with it, promote it, engage with it, make it a reality on your campus, and advertise it will be the fastest growing campus in the United States. One of them had their microphone on and she laughed at that. That tells you where your campuses are right now. So I'm going to move really quick. I apologize for doing this to you, but I'm going to do this. Senate Bill 588, the exact same student Bill of Rights that apply now to your students on a campus at Common Ed in your public education system. Exact same thing. You can't even demean the religion. You can't even hang a Black Lives Matter flag in your room anymore because they're a Marxist organization. This one is even more fun because this one has parental triggers. So guess what you can do? You as a parent can get 10% of the class in which it's happening, and you can go after the school board and trigger an investigation with the State Department of Education. You want your schools back? Go get them. And by the way, if they refuse to do it, the teachers and administrators can all lose their license. Wouldn't that be fun? And listen to me carefully. I'm a result of public education. Taught in it for 15 years. The people teaching around me were great patriots, solid conservatives, but down at the end of the hall is the one socialist. And every student has to run through her classroom. And I spent most of a year undoing the damage she had done. That's one teacher out of a whole bunch of them. So we have to put lids on these things. Okay, this is the fun one. This one passed this year. This is a God thing. Understand, I am nowhere near this intelligent. And I'm not shy to admit that. House Bill 1775 came to me out of sheer frustration. I had tried to get 588 and 614, a hearing on the floor. I had been denied. I had been lied to. All these different things happened. We couldn't even get Senate Bill 2 out of committee because Senate Bill 2, by the way, is the Save Women's Sports. It says a very common sense phrase: only biological males can play against biological males. They wouldn't even give it a hearing. A Republican. So I'm walking down the hall, and the chairman of education comes to me and says, "Hey, would you be willing to run a bill?" And I said, "Depends on what bill you want me to run." And he handed me the language, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll take that." Here's what the bill says. I changed this, by the way, so I added my own little flair to it. But this is section 1. It says, no enrolled student of any institution of higher education within the Oklahoma State system of higher education shall be required to engage in any form of mandatory gender or sexual diversity training, which is how they're doing it, provided voluntary counseling is not prohibited. Any orientation requirement presents any form of race or sex stereotyping or bias on the basis of race or sex shall be prohibited. They can no longer, as of this bill, as of July 1st, can require one single student to go through training for critical race theory. Or gender neutrality. Can't tell them there's 165 different genders. Who would have thought that would have been a difficult concept? Common education. Now, Common Ed, I can approach it different because Common Education has curriculum, right? So I can approach it a little bit different. Look at A. Now, go back. Let me look at number 1. No teacher, administrator, or other employee of a school district, charter school, or virtual school shall require or make part of a course of the following concepts. They can't even train students. This can't even be part of their curriculum. A. One race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. That is critical race theory. I can show you quotes from Derek Bell saying that whites the white race, is inferior to all other races. B, an individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Now, you would think these would be kind of common sense, wouldn't you? They debated me for 2.5 hours on the Senate floor on this bill, wanting to know, why can't we do this? Every tenet you see here is a tenet of the 1619 Project or of critical race theory. And I can prove it because when they would ask me questions, I would quote. I went back and read the founders of critical race theory, their documents. I have the quotes. I know exactly what they're doing. There's a book called White Fragility, and it is training on some of the campuses in Oklahoma right now to read that book and study it. You know which ones I'm talking about. This is the requirement that they have, is that they want to go back and teach this. A school campus in New York was denied by a judge because they wanted to go back to segregated classrooms. This is what's happening in your public education systems, especially in your metros. This is what they're wanting to put in. By the way, public schools came full circle with me on this one. Their first response was, we don't do this anywhere in Oklahoma. And then when I showed them the assignments being sent to me by teachers that said, this is what they're requiring me to do. When I showed that to them, they said, well, but we have to teach this in order to teach history. And when I explained to them, I am a history teacher, and if you have to teach this in your classroom to teach history, you're the racist. And you don't need to be in a classroom. And then they came back to me and said, we want to teach this. And it's all over Oklahoma right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, the loud shriek you heard in April was the devil inside our schools. Because he has us by this. So the school's reaction told me about a problem deeper than I realized we had. So now we're passing even more. I had a science teacher come to me, an administrator come to me, who said that a 9th grade science teacher had a prompt on her board that all her students had to write that said, the writing prompt was, disprove creationism and explain why young earth theory is improbable. To do that, what would a student have to do? Deny their faith. So in 588, we've amended the language now to say you can never even have a prompt to ask a student to deny their faith, to disprove their faith. We're going after it. Evolution's coming down. I'm going to skip this because I'm in a hurry and that little clock over there keeps beeping at me. So, what issues do we have control over? Most people have, I don't know if some of you may have seen this, but I wanted to show this to you so you can see where we are. And then I'll get to another couple of bills we're doing next year that really lean on these powers. National government powers, they have the power to make treaties, establish a postal system, regulate foreign interstate commerce, by the way, which means in the cattle industry, in beef processing, why does the USDA have a monopoly on our beef industry? If we're selling and processing beef inside of Oklahoma, we are the #1 beef producing state in the world, I think. Why is it that USDA has such a stranglehold on our industry? But I'll get to that later. Here, coin money, protect copyright, patents, things like that. Here's the shared powers: collect taxes, regulate banks, establish and administrate a judiciary, borrow money, provide for the common good, make and enforce laws. Now, look over here at how many powers we have as a state, and this really isn't all of them. Establish local government, regulate what? Intrastate commerce. What does it say on the third one? Who controls public education? Joe Biden? Because I can tell you right now, they are administering millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to schools who will teach critical race theory in their schools. As a matter of fact, we caught it this year in the rule promulgation. Somebody brought it to me and said, what is this? Our state superintendent was trying to put critical race theory and all this woke stuff through our libraries. She was trying to sneak it in through our libraries. So through rule promulgation, we were going to now adopt all the standards of the American Library Association. When you went back and looked, their section on LGBT plus whatever curriculum was about that thick when I printed it off. That's what they want you to put in there. They wanted their librarians to give students on their implicit bias test to find out just how racist you really are without even knowing it. That's our superintendent in Oklahoma wanting to put that in through our libraries. And what's already there, I don't know. I'm still investigating. Conduct what? Oh my, oh my. Can you start the clock over at 35 minutes? No. Understand, we had a stolen election. Joe Biden does not belong anywhere in that. The Constitution says that state legislatures shall determine election rules and laws in 6 states, and 6 states that just happen to flip. The judiciary or the governor are the ones who change the election laws to open it up to basically voting any way you want. That's unconstitutional. If a football team cheats, they don't just go back and say after the game, we're going to go take the yardage back. What do? They cancel the whole game. You don't get the game because you cheated. There's no reason why Joe Biden should be president of the United States. What's that one say? Regulations for? Oh my, oh my. If you want to read something really entertaining, go and look at John Roberts' ruling. And one of the few things I agree with the man on, but go look at Obergefell, his dissenting opinion. John Roberts said, if you are looking for the Constitution in this decision, stop looking. 9 unelected lawyers decided that they wanted gay marriage and to change the definition, and they just did it. Well, Obergefell's got to go down. Okay, so I'm going to do this one more time to you. Let me get to this one. This one I'm proud of, and I'm going to need your help. This is SJR 17. SJR stands for Senate Joint Resolution. It means that if it passes the House and Senate, it becomes a vote of the people and becomes a state question. If I can get this through, it means that Oklahoma will have the opportunity to vote on the ban of abortion. It is a personhood bill with teeth in it. Now, Missouri's passed them. We've had other personhood bills that didn't do anything. They just said what's living in there is a person, right? Now, I told you earlier, Hugo Black was somebody that I don't quote very often. There's a reason. Hugo Black is the one who came back and said, if the question of personhood were to be established in favor of the unborn, the 14th Amendment would no longer apply just to Roe. The 14th Amendment would now apply to an unborn person. Now, the 14th Amendment says if you are a citizen of a state, you are a citizen of the United States, and all citizens, born or naturalized, are guaranteed 2 things: equal protection under the law, due process of law. So in an abortion, what due process did the baby get? What crime did they commit? Are we equally protecting that person to all the other people who are citizens of this country? So then the rationale is anyone performing abortion is guilty of a felony for murdering a person. And that's what the bill states. The only exception we put in was for the extreme life of the mother, because in that instance, which is rarest of the rare, you have citizenship rights. The mother is due to equal protection under the law. She has the same exact constitutional bundle of rights. But that's the only situation. I've had people come to me and say, well, how come you don't put rape and incest? Well, let me ask you a question. Does the manner in which you are conceived make you more or less human? Which one is it? That's a difficult question to answer, isn't it? So rape and incest doesn't matter. And SJR 17 does that. One last one, and then I'll close. I'll make it. I'll be just a little bit over. Oh, I was going to do this. I forgot about this. Which one of these were born in rape and incest? Were conceived in it? No way to tell. They are both equal in the sight of God. So SJR 21, last one real quick. You know, this year we passed Senate Bill 631, which is a sanctuary state for Second Amendment. What it does is we give cover to law enforcement to say that if you are told by the federal government to confiscate or put taxes on guns, we're going to provide you cover, and you are not allowed to confiscate or tax guns. This one does the same thing, except it puts it in your Constitution. In statute, it's easy to change. If we had a switch coming up later on where the Democrats actually did get in control, they could take that out real quick. But if we put it in our Constitution, guess what? It's a whole lot harder to go around to people. You may be voting on this one in June of next year as well. Okay? All right, let me get to the end because I'm out of time. Anybody know who that is? Old guy. Somebody said old guy. It's like being in a classroom again. That's William Booth, founder of the Salvation Army. As I have studied this man, I have gotten more and more impressed with him. A reporter once asked him and said, what do you think the chief danger of the coming 20th century is? And his response is prophetic. He said, the chief danger of the 20th century shall be religion without the Holy Ghost, Christianity without Christ, salvation without regeneration, listen, politics without God, and a heaven without a hell. He was doing a class on evangelicals once, and he was told it was going to be a 6-week course that he had planned. It took him 6 months. And he was overheard by a student telling the class, I am sorry that this course took this long. If I could show you hell, this would have taken 5 minutes. For those pushing communism, if I could show it to you, we wouldn't be having the debate we're having right now. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Darkness does not exist except for the absence of light. It is not its own separate entity. The only reason darkness exists is because the light goes away. You are the light. If you go quiet and stop proclaiming the name of Jesus, so is everything else. One last one and I'm done. I love quoting this man. That's James A. Garfield, our 20th president of the United States, one of the greatest presidents ever, but he was assassinated within 3 months of being elected president. Here's what he said. He said, now more than ever, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. But if that body be intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because the people demand such high standards from their elected legislature. And if the time shall come that America is no longer thought of as a great nation, it will be because those responsible for controlling the morality and the enterprise did not aid in controlling its political forces. Go take your country back. Love you guys.